stuck in the mud recently. Remember, they were good in 2020, and then in 2021 they were the top seed, and then it kind of fell off a cliff. Do you think Cam to Tennessee is a lock, Nick?
No. I do think he's a lock to go number one. I'm not certain the Titans are keeping that pick. And so I absolutely see a scenario where the Giants trade up with Tennessee to go up and get him. And I don't see a lot of other teams that I think are realistic. I would have said the Raiders potentially before they made their move at quarterback. So now they're obviously not doing it. The Saints, listen, I think the Saints, I don't know that Tennessee would be willing to move that far down. I think one of the reasons the Giants are in an interesting spot, the Patriots too, but the Patriots obviously don't want to move up, is it feels to me like there are two players, non-quarterbacks in this draft, that everyone says are just kind of premium blue chip, better than all the other non-quarterbacks, in Carter and Travis Hunter. And so if you move down to 3 and you know that the team that's trading up with you is drafting a quarterback, you know you're getting one of those two guys. And so, and it's why the Patriots desperately hope quarterbacks go 2 of the top 3, because then they definitely get one of those guys. So I could see a scenario where the Giants say, man, the number one, Kevin Clark says this a lot, the number one job is for everyone in the NFL is to keep the job. And so you do kind of reset your clock with a rookie quarterback a bit, if you're Dable or Shane. And so and it's Sheil Kupati that says that, my apologies. But regardless, so I could see them doing that. But I am very confident that Cam Ward's going to go number 1 in this draft.
I tend to agree. I think he'll go number 1. It really all is going to depend on how much Tennessee loves him, because they need a quarterback
desperately
as much as anybody in the league.
Yes.
And so if they love him, then they're going to draft him, and that'll be their guy. We'll see what he does. I mean, I like him. I like what I saw. I'm not fully convinced how great he'll be, though we have seen these young guys come in and play well right away, a lot of them. So he seems to have all the qualities off the field. You know, people like his leadership. Obviously, he's physically gifted, got the great arm. So it really is just going to be on Tennessee. Do they see him as the guy? Some people are looking at next year's draft for quarterbacks, Arch Manning and guys. So I think it's just how teams are measuring Cam versus some of those guys.
And that's why I don't think it's a lock, because I don't know if they truly, as bad as they need a quarterback, I don't know if they are truly believing and sold on the idea that one of these guys is their future. Yeah. One of these guys being Cam and obviously Shedeur Sanders. Like, I get it. You got to get a quarterback. That's just what everybody says you should do. But passing up on those 2 guys that you're talking about, Abdul Carter, who's, I mean, he's guaranteed. Travis Hunter, pretty much a lock. If Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, whichever one you pick, we'll talk about Cam Ward right now. If you're saying Cam Ward is that guy and he turns out not to be that guy, and you're still in that situation that you're trying to muddle out of with Will Levis and a couple of years ago, Malik Willis, second and third round guys, I think it was, like, you missed. And you got a sure thing in other guys as far as best total football player.
But so that's why I think if you're Tennessee, I think it is almost irresponsible if you're Tennessee and you don't want to draft Cam to not find a trade with the Giants. Because even if you don't get, typically when a team moves up to 1, they're giving up future ones and, you know what I mean, a bunch of stuff. Even if you don't get that type of bounty, because you would still be getting at 3 one of those 2 guys and something extra. Even if it's just by the, you know, Jimmy Johnson or whatever draft chart you want, like, oh, they didn't get as much value as they should have. Something extra. Like, just, hey, we'll trade you 1 for 3 and just your second-round pick. That second-round pick in and of itself is super valuable.
Yeah,
that
would be that'd be great.
That would not be a lot in comparison of the
previous ones, sure.
Previous
not next
ones.
year ones, but that's what you think. I thought it would go for 3 and something later in the draft.
Well, that would,
not the second round.
Yeah, historically speaking, not at all. Like, to move up to 1-1, it takes, a very, very, very good first rounder this year, a future first rounder, and something else. This might be a little different. Tennessee's in a weird spot, though, because the coach feels, I'm sure, even though he's only been there a year, I need to win some games.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But the GM, if I were running the Titans and I'm the brand new GM and I know I have some real runway, I would definitely not want to be taking my quarterback in this year's draft. I would want to be doing it in next year's draft, right? And I would, would like the idea of let's add a blue chip player for a team that honestly, sorry for the Titans, but doesn't really have blue chippers anywhere. And add a true blue chip player, be okay with being bad, have extra draft capital, and then, do it again. I know that's kind of a tough way to look at a season, but I think that would make the most sense. If I'm Brian Callahan, I'm like, hell no. This is my shot, and I need a real quarterback.
So according to Dusty, Cam Ward was also talking to Joe Shane, GM of the Giants. I wonder, the biggest question, he's going to throw is going to be awesome. The ball's going to zip out of his hands. We get it. The biggest question I have coming out of this pro day, are we going to finally start to see some of those like winks and nods from the Titans brass like we did last year with the Bears? And we're like, we don't know who we're going to take, but we sure do like, we sure do like USC quarterbacks. Like, and it was all kind of this just running joke. It feels like the Titans are just quiet. We saw the same thing with Cincinnati. When they took Burrow, just when there's a consensus number one, there starts to become these other storylines in the
I think a lot of
front offices show their hands, and Titans haven't.
So if I just real quick, I think when teams show their hands, it's when the guy who is considered the best player in the class is also a quarterback. I think this is a weird spot because I don't think anybody thinks. I don't think any of the guys, the scouts that give prospects a grade, has Cam Ward rated as the best player in this class.
Correct.
I think they just all have him rated, or not all, most have him rated as the best quarterback, but then like the 6th best player in the class, or you know what I mean. Caleb was 1-1. I think Burrow was 1-1. And so it's a different.
I mean, Caleb was so far and away viewed as the best quarterback. I know few people had Jaden. But Caleb, and it wasn't just from last year.
Correct.
It was before. So that was totally different. Even though Cam is viewed as the consensus best quarterback by most people, not consensus, by most people, it's nowhere close. He's nowhere near viewed as like the sure thing that Caleb was. And obviously, Caleb wasn't necessarily a sure thing yet. So, yeah, I think that's a big difference, too.
He shows a level of precision reminiscent of Greg Maddox.
Okay.
Working the strike zone, squeezing anticipatory throws into tight windows on various in-breaking routes at intermediate range, a throw-them-open passer with top-notch ball placement. Is anyone buying that Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in the draft?
I am. I like Shedeur. I'm feeling confident after liking C.J. Stroud better than Bryce Young. And I didn't really like Jaden better. But
no, you didn't.
But C.J.
Really.
I'm feeling confident because of C.J. But I like Shedeur. And I am not hung up on smaller schools or like non-blue blood programs. But if you look at 3 of the top 4 quarterbacks in the league now, Mahomes, Texas Tech, Lamar, Louisville,
Josh Allen,
Wyoming. They were in situations where they didn't have a bunch of blue chippers around them, right? And they, you get into the NFL, now you got better supporting cast, and they've excelled. That's what I like about Shedeur. He didn't have a good offensive line for 2 years at Colorado, didn't have any type of running game to speak of. Now, he had some really good receivers, but still, you need the time to get the ball to those receivers or a running game to, keep the defense honest. He had none of that, and not only did he put up numbers, but he won. And so, we know he's accurate. The only thing, like people saying he doesn't have the greatest arm, okay, his arm's good enough. We've seen some of the best quarterbacks ever not have the strongest
Burrow
arm.
doesn't have the strongest arm.
Right. So I'm not worried about that. Then, he's not that athletic. Well, yeah, compared to some of the freaks playing the position now, but he's clearly athletic enough to maneuver in the pocket, out of the pocket. Like, I don't think he's just not going to be a running quarterback. But I think he'll be fine as far as his athleticism to play the position. So, obviously, his dad's got him trained, I think, mentally, not only to handle the spotlight and the attention, but I am sure that Deion has schooled him to the best of his ability on NFL-style, offenses and
everybody
playing and stuff
says
like
he's
that.
super smart.
Yeah.
Like that, as far as his sophistication of, like, seeing what's in front of him.
Process and all
yes,
that.
the processing.
Yeah, this is who I think is the best quarterback in the draft. And I've said
Shedeur?
this. Shedeur. Like, when we've seen the translation of collegiate quarterback going to the NFL, we get enamored and we get excited about the dual threat quarterback, and they very well may have the greatest upside. But the ones who come in and immediately make an impact are the ones that can stand up and throw the ball in the pocket. And the first thing that we say about a Lamar or a guy like Jaden Daniels, he's kind of on an island by himself. Right. But the first thing we say, Cam Newton, well, all he does is use his legs. Justin Fields, can he stand up in the pocket? Can he throw? Can he make reads? We want him to do that. That's what he does. That is what he does. That's his strength. And so can he get outside the pocket if he absolutely has to? We've seen him do that. We've seen him make plays and scramble for first downs and whatnot. But he's going to stand in the pocket with poise and still make an accurate throw. You don't get that too often coming straight from college into the pros. And he's been poised and primed to handle all types of pressure because of who his dad is. He talked about it at the Combine. Because of his name and understanding he has to live up to a certain expectation, I embrace this. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like, this is what I'm built for. And so when he has and walks with that type of confidence and has this type of game, this is what makes me a believer of him being the number one quarterback.
Can I ask you a question before you go? Yeah. If the Giants take him, and we're all at consensus, and even Bucky Brooks has limited athleticism, the Giants' offensive line is not perfect. Guys were getting chased around.
He's dealt with it before.
Right.
He's dealt with it.
I think it's different dealing with Colorado State edges and dealing with the Eagles.
I understand.
That's what I'd be worried about.
I totally understand that. And I would argue he's definitely going to have to get rid of the ball. That's the one thing that I would say. Watching him over and over again, even when it doesn't matter when you watch them, it's like, throw the ball. C.J. Stroud, even in the playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs this year, get rid of the ball. You get frustrated with that, but you also understand that's just a part of who they are at quarterback. And so learning how to make the offensive line better by being more of a check down guy, which he has shown he can be that. He's not a check down Charlie, so to speak, but he can definitely get the ball out of his hands if he needs to.
So here's my concern. And by the way, I feel a little similarly about Cam Ward, which is why I don't know that I love any quarterback in this class. Right. When we're talking about taking a guy first overall or in top 3, I want to know, like, okay, what are they elite at? What are they awesome at?
Accuracy.
And so I don't buy that by NFL standards Shedeur has elite accuracy. I do think there is one trait that I think he is already elite at, and that's toughness. This kid got his ass kicked repeatedly and popped up. Do you know what I mean? And I do think that, for what you're talking about, matters, but that's a rough one to be elite at because it's
you don't want that test.
No, right. It's the trait that you hope you don't have to show.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it was Mahomes was in a similar spot at Tech where he got beat up, and then his first couple years in the NFL, you never saw it. You know what I mean? He did, but it was good when it did get tested a couple years ago, and he had to play with the high ankle sprain. It's like, oh, guy's tough as hell. Like, good, he has that in his bag. That's my concern with Shedeur, is that I agree with a lot of Brew's analysis. I just probably would downgrade a lot of it by like 10%. I think he's pretty good to good at almost everything. And I think even the athleticism stuff, I think he's pretty good athletically compared to, the 30 NFL quarterbacks. But I just don't look at him as we looked at those top 3 guys last year. Caleb, to me, was elite at a number of things, but probably number 1 would be impossible throws, you know what I mean? Like creativity,
plays,
if you will.
Right.
Jaden was one of the freakiest athletes to come in the league at the position since RG3, and Drake May was Herbert-esque as far as like almost built in a lab, size, strength, measurables, arm strength, all of that. And he was like 12 years old, so he had a bunch of, room to grow. I don't see like an elite trait really for either of these guys, and that's my concern. And so Shedeur is incredibly tough, but that's a weird trait.
Do you buy, outside of toughness, do you buy, and Bucky's talking about like poise, almost in a way we see C.J. Stroud? It's like, man, you don't look like a rookie. Like you're processing stuff super fast.
So I just have to.
You're just here, and you're like, man, you look like a 10-year
So that's
vet.
where I just have to just be honest with the audience and just take other people's word for it. When people are like, oh, he's changing the protection at the line, he is reading the defenses. When I think a quarterback can do that, it's because someone else has told me they can do it. You know what I mean? Like I can't watch football in that way. So like if that's what Bucky says, then I give him credit for it. But when I'm watching the game,
I think he's also talking about he will sit in that pocket and have a dude
that's the
right
toughness
down on
thing.
him.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.